Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We now enter a new phase of the Trump presidency amidst the outrageous, outlandish, left-wing, chaotic mob behavior of socialist Democrats. American momentum is now around winning. The winning that outsider candidate Donald Trump promised us, not the anarchy Democrats, aka demon rats, want to impose on us. The tactics of these demon rats and Trump-hating leftists are backfiring. Americans are now buying into and choosing results over politically correct losing behavior of other presidents. When the New York Times, Bret Stephens, and the Wall Street Journal's Peggy Noonan, both dug-in Trump haters, say Senate Democrats not only overplayed their hand, but that Democrats are blowing it, you know they sense what's coming. And it's not the blue wave that the genius pundits predicted. They know they lost, not just the Kavanaugh fight, but the American people along the way. Americans don't like lies, injustice, and they certainly don't like vigilante or mob justice. The insanity that we witnessed by those suffering from Trump derangement syndrome is both shocking and unprecedented. From being tossed out of restaurants to being directed to harass, intimidate, confront, and make a crowd around anyone they don't agree with, they ramped it up even more during the Kavanaugh hearings, screaming, interrupting, shouting down senators, blocking them from voting, and that are attempting to block them from voting, and then in their feigned loser outrage, they claw on the doors of the United States Supreme Court as Kavanaugh is being sworn in. Americans are fair, and they've had enough. According to Real Clear Politics, Republican senators in key states have dramatically turned things around. Cruz, Blackburn, Heller, McSally, and demon rat Cory Booker, who is now the laughingstock of the Senate after likening himself to Spartacus, fell flat off his chariot. And they justify their behavior.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Hillary, other than power, cash, and Harvey Weinstein, and your own sexual predator husband, what the hell do you stand for? And take a listen to this one.
But Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them. That's what this new Democratic Party is about.
Really, Eric? You, a former Attorney General of the United States, condone violence? Someone who thinks beliefs and words justify physical assault? Did you even go to law school? Look, Here's the bottom line. We're not even 2 years into Trump's presidency. The economy, record high. Unemployment, record low. Under President Trump, Americans saved $3.2 trillion in taxes. 3.3 million jobs have been created. The military is being rebuilt. 120 federal judges have been appointed. 2 United States Supreme Court justices. A much improved trade deal for the U.S. with Canada and Mexico. The stock market has hit historic highs 80 times. 81,000 illegal aliens have been deported by ICE. 15 hostages have been brought home from countries like North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, and of course, just today, Pastor Andrew Brunson from Turkey. So to all those Trump-hating demon rats and the mainstream media, keep up the antics. You're all losers, sore losers, stupid losers, too dumb to even know that you're losing. He said it himself just a few minutes ago in Kentucky.
The only reason to vote Democrat is if you're tired of winning.
I don't know about you, but I'm not tired yet.
It is Monday, the 15th of October of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. That's right, folks. It's been another one of those weekends, and it's going to be another one of those weeks. So, hey, we got to get into it with things that will stick to your ribs. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Janine Perot, if that's winning, you go right ahead. And we'll see you after the midterms. And we know what's going to happen after the midterms. They're going to declare martial law and that we had help from some hostile foreign power, and so therefore none of the elections are valid. You just know that's what they're going to do. Oops. You know it. Yeah, that is a tremendous amount of projection on Janine Perot's part. And that's what they do. They always project the darkest before the red dawn. Okay. Well, lots of news over the weekend. We have a little bit of news about the Proud Boys going on a little brown shirt beaten up and beat down right after a Republican confab in New York City. Mm-hmm. And we've only been telling you about the Proud Boys. They've been running wild and free in Portland, pretty much in the Northwest, but Portland in particular. And the cops always stand by while the Proud Boys get to do what they get to do, and then they go in and arrest the people that had the crap beat out of them, and that would be like the Proud Boys victims. That's what happened in New York, too. We'll get into a little bit of that. Trump had his little sit-down conversation with Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes. What a lion, Saka! Boy. And anyway, his psychophants, they love it because they're lying for them. He's doing it for them. Well, I think he's like one of those weird cinematic snake kings. And his followers will be pushed into the open cauldron of lava fire. Because that's what he does. He has to sacrifice the minions so that, he is fed properly by whatever entity that has bestowed, whatever it is that he thinks he's been bestowed with. I don't know. Is this what money does to people? Well, it did it to this guy. And he was born into it, too. Boy. Reason enough that we should have listened to the Founding Fathers. Okay. What else? The Khashoggi story continues. A rumor, a report that he had recorded his meeting in the consulate there in Turkey on his Apple Watch, which then went to his phone that his fiancée was holding, that then pushed it into the cloud. Turkey keeps saying that they have this, but no real corroboration on our part, but maybe, just maybe, it's because, yeah, we got it too, because, hey, everything in the cloud is going to go through some filter somewhere, don't you think? Yes, it does. I watched a documentary about the making of this movie on the Armenian genocide, and I've always been an advocate for letting that be taught more in our schools, because there's lots of people say it never was genocide. Maybe it was a pogrom. Well, pogrom, I don't know. Pogrom's like a genocide too. I'm just saying. But yeah, it did account for a genocide. And I will say that what Pol Pot did to his people, that was genocide too. Okay? I'm just saying. But knowing Turkey's longtime influence just on the Armenian question. And we have now Erdogan, who's no real friend, except on the other hand, Trump does love him some strongman guy. And this guy's been a strongman for 10 years? No, yeah, 12, 15 years? Okay. And so I wonder really what the hell is going on here. And I guess we're going to find out. Let's just hope we don't find out, under the auspices of a I don't know, a warlike conflict. I hate the idea that this guy who told Leslie Stahl, it doesn't matter, I'm the president and you're not. What an oafish bully. God. All right, well, we're going to have to get into the stories that we've curated for you today. And we are in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And so we'll start off on the rest of the menu. New York officials will investigate the Proud Boys mob attack. But no probe was announced of police inaction, just as it always is. The GOP swiftboats a Democratic candidate for Congress in Minnesota who won the Bronze Star as not being a real patriot. And the GOP Congressional Leadership Fund, that's a top PAC, super PAC, that funds congressional candidates for the GOP. Well, they're yanking money from Putin's favorite congressman, Dana Rohrabacher, as the longtime assets campaign collapses. Who would have thought? Then after the break, we move to the chef's table, where Pacific Gas and Electric turned off power to over 100,000 people in 12 Northern California counties to prevent wildfires. Yeah, their equipment breaks in a windstorm and then causes wildfires. How nice. And Sears files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy amid plunging sales and massive debt. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. We have links to be able to determine if you are registered to vote and also to register to vote at our homepage at netrootsradio.com. So please do go there and check it out, okay? It's important. We only have not very many weeks left now until a momentous election. Do they say that every time? Not every time, but they say it enough. And it has a tremendously more dire meaning now. And I don't mean to make you fearful, because I don't like using fear to get you to be motivated to do things. But, be pissed. Also, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is a chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And do check out her shows on Saturday at the table with Kelly Lincoln at 3 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. Later on, she teams up with Ricky for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast, for a power hour that is full of power. Then, if you would look to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, the contribute button is there, and please do become a Patreon to Netroots Radio. Your generosity helps pay the bills and keeps these lights blinking in the way they're supposed to be blinking. And with all sincerity, thank you very much for that. If you want, you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. And we are also on Facebook. Okay, that's where we are. And we're on other social media platforms as well, like Tumblr and others. So check us wherever you need to or want to check us out at. You can follow me at Twitter at Justice Putnam. Also, I am on Daily Co's, where I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime. And I am found there as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. We are on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And pick up podcasts of the show on Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays too, by the way, is by Josh Israel out of Think Progress. New York State and city officials promised to launch an immediate investigation into attacks on Friday by the Proud Boys, a far-right hate group with ties to neo-Nazis. Well, I would say they're neo-Nazis, but I don't quibble on those things. They did not say, however, if their probe will look into inaction by New York City police, who failed to arrest members of the group as they brutally beat multiple men and called them homophobic and anti-immigrant slurs. New York Attorney General Barbara Underwood said on Saturday that she was disturbed and disgusted by the attack by the so-called Proud Boys. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo also denounced the attacks and demanded immediate prosecutions. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said his police department is fully investigating the attacks and asked for the public's help in providing video and information about the incident. New York City public advocate Tish James urged the district attorney to pursue hate crime charges against the neo-fascist white supremacist Proud Boys group so the city does not become the next Charlottesville. And Tish James issued that also by way of Twitter, as everybody else does nowadays. The New York Police Department has not yet explained why 3 protesters were arrested for taking a backpack, yet those Proud Boys involved in the attacks were permitted to leave without arrest, though several officers were present. But it did release a statement saying it is currently reviewing additional video and other evidence to determine if other arrests are warranted, which I guess they're going to be arresting more protesters, because if they hadn't been in the way of these neo-fascists when they had their brown shirt crystal knocked, there would have been no broken glass. Bullard of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, Republicans are smearing a Democratic candidate for Congress in Minnesota who served 2 duties in Iraq and earned a Bronze Star in the process, claiming he's not sufficiently patriotic because he doesn't kowtow to Herr Führer. All right. The Minnesota race is a hotly contested one and is currently rated a toss-up between Democratic John Feehan and Republican Jim Hagedorn to fill a vacated seat. The son of a U.S. congressman, Hagedorn has never served in the U.S. military, and that's why he's so able to criticize those who have. But that's not stopping the GOP nominee from waging an ugly attack against Feehan, a U.S. Army veteran, much like Republicans smeared John Kerry's heroic military service when he ran for president in 2004. It's just the latest in a series of vicious smears against veterans funded by national Republican groups. In the new attack ad, Republicans try to claim that Feehan is not a real patriot because he supported former quarterback Colin Kaepernick when he quietly knelt during the national anthem prior to the start of NFL games. Liberal Dan Feehan celebrated Colin's protest on the national anthem, the ad claims, wrongly suggesting Kaepernick was protesting the national anthem, or that Feehan celebrated it, which Kaepernick didn't, and Feehan didn't either. A local Minnesota television station looked into the GOP attacks on Feehan's patriotism and concluded they were, quote, deceptive, out of context, and mostly false. Well, I would think that they were more than mostly, but, this is a respected journalistic institution, and I mean the television station. We looked at all the Feehan tweets about Kaepernick and the NFL protest, including retweets and his use of the hashtag Veterans for Kaepernick. Local CBS affiliate WCCO reported in Minnesota what Feehan supported was Kaepernick's right to protest. Feehan tweeted, "It is the precise use of freedom I fought for on foreign soil." The Feehan campaign denounced the disgraceful smear, saying this type of misleading attack does a disservice to the people of the 1st District and, quite frankly, is an affront to the service of veterans everywhere who fought for these freedoms. And Vote Vet slammed back on the false attack ad, too, for at the GOP for exploiting veterans as a political strategy. And the Republicans are saying, yeah, but that's why we prop all those things about veterans up in the first place. Why do you think we have flyovers of military jets at the beginning of football games? And Kaepernick is he's questioning that. Well, according to Hagedorn's bio, the greatest risk he faced was when he, quote, crafted an appropriations provision and worked with Congress and interested parties, including unions, to prohibit the use of federal funds to merge the Bureau of Engraving and Printing into the United States Mint. My, that's some dangerous service there. I don't know how he'll be able to cope. Tommy of Think Progress brings us this last offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Well, with 3 weeks to go until the election, things are not looking good for some California incumbents, and it's not just in California either. Let's see. The Republican Party's leading outside congressional election super PAC announced it will not use its funds to back 2 Southern California lawmakers facing tough odds in the coming midterms. None of the $12 million that the Congressional Leadership Fund plans to spend on cable television ad buys will go to the races of incumbent representatives Dana Rohrabacher and Mimi Walters. Oh my. Both serve in Orange County, and both won re-election in historically red districts that voted in favor of Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, and each of their races is categorized as Republican toss-up by the Cook Political Report. The decision seems to indicate that the races are not a priority for Republicans who may see the races as unwinnable against the onslaught of funds raised by their Democratic challengers. Boy, they're going to try to put some squash on that kind of funding soon, won't they? Both Rohrabacher and Walters' Democratic opponents outraised them in 2018. In fact, Democrats nationwide have consistently outraised Republicans with a 30% increase in annual fundraising compared to the 2016 election cycle. And of course, look, Republicans are taking a cold, hard look at these races, and they've decided not to throw good money after bad. And you're certainly not going to throw bad money after bad either. The bad money's just cream on the top of it. Why would you want to get rid of that? The LA Times reported that the Congressional Leadership Fund, which collects large checks from top Republican donors, can always add Rohrabacher and Walters to their ad lineup at a later date. But millions of Californians have already received their ballots by mail, so immediate advertising is crucial to the fate of the 2 lawmakers. Well, let's go ahead and get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, film noir meets Mean Girls. The best things about the screen adaptation of the witty dark comedy A Simple Favor are the leads, Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively, who elevate their characters to way beyond the caricatures they could have easily become. Both create memorable, complex portrayals of women who aren't exactly what they appear to be. At first glance, the two couldn't appear more different. Kendrick's Stephanie is a widowed mother who creates a world of tranquil domesticity, both via her video channel as well as her hands-on approach towards raising her young son. On the other hand, we have Emily, a successful, hard-drinking New York PR executive who appears to have everything and who has an outsourcing approach to motherhood. Nevertheless, the two become friends, and when Emily goes missing under mysterious circumstances, it's Stephanie who steps into the role of surrogate mother to Emily's son, and later a surrogate wife to her husband Sean, played by Henry Golding of recent Crazy Rich Asians fame. On the way to finding out what happens to Emily, we're treated to a tale where twists and turns abound, some funny and some pretty disturbing, all of which make for a truly suspenseful ride. Many will identify with Stephanie's character, who is coping with raising a child with insufficient support, but who nonetheless wants to be the sort of mom that society praises. But being this way, and being eager for adult friendship, leads her to falling into doormat territory. arguably where her troubles begin when a sophisticated Emily shows interest in her. Likewise, Emily shows how motherhood doesn't necessarily alter a woman's core character. There's nothing simple about a simple favor. With Stephanie's vlog, a wonderfully cheesy detective, and cutesy postscript, director Paul Feig navigates a dark story that still manages to offer some solid laughs. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Last summer's total solar eclipse sliced right through Columbia, Missouri.
It was remarkable. As a biologist, I generally reserve that word remarkable for biological phenomena.
Candace Galen is based at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and being a biologist, she thought, why not use this astronomical phenomenon to study a biological one? Specifically, as the skies darkened, would daytime pollinators like bumblebees and honeybees call it quits?
What better activity during an eclipse than to go out with a recorder and record the bees?
So Galen asked 400 citizen scientists, including young students, to place audio recorders in 16 flower patches along the path of totality in Oregon, Idaho, and Missouri. When they analyzed the audio, they found that during partial eclipse, bee buzzing continued. But when totality hit, the bees went silent, and only the conversational buzz of human observers could be heard. Then, as the moon passed and the sun again lit up the sky, the bees regained their buzz. The full write-up is in the Annals of the Entomological Society of America. Galen and her colleagues did notice one strange detail. The individual buzzes lasted longer than normal during the partial eclipse periods. Perhaps, Galen says, because the bees were flying more slowly to navigate darker conditions. Or maybe they were just returning to their nests, thinking the day was through. It's hard to tell from the recording, she says, which is why, come the next American total solar eclipse in 2024, she'll be back out listening once again.
I'm a scientist. My curiosity is never satisfied, right?
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the third trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. Occasional aches and pains are an expected part of life, but for many people, pain is a constant companion. Dr. Chad Helmick is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. He's joining us today to discuss ways to manage chronic pain. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you.
Chad, how many people in the U.S. suffer from chronic pain?
In 2016, 50 million adults had chronic pain, which is pain on most or every day in the past 6 months. More interesting, though, is that 20 million people have high-impact chronic pain, which is chronic pain that also limits their work or life activities on most or every day in the past 6 months. This is a problem because chronic pain is associated not only with symptoms, but with anxiety and depression, reduced quality of life, and the risk of opioid problems.
What are the most common causes of chronic pain?
The most common causes generally relate to bones and joints, like low back pain and arthritis, but there are many other causes: headaches, sickle cell disease, fibromyalgia, surgery and injuries, and many, many others.
Is chronic pain more common in any particular group of people?
Yes, it occurs at all ages, but it's more common in older middle-aged adults and in the oldest 85 and older. It's also more common in women, poor people, and those who live in rural areas.
How is chronic pain treated?
Well, the first thing to do is to get a diagnosis, which can help guide treatment. But the thinking about chronic pain now is that it becomes a chronic disease by itself, regardless of the cause, and that can cause significant problems. The real goal in management is to have a manageable level of pain, not to get rid of all pain. There's several steps that can be taken, and these are sometimes difficult to do because of barriers to access. But it makes sense to do the simplest and safest things first. And these are non-drug steps. Things like physical activity. Walking is perfectly good to help reduce pain. Also, self-management education can give you some confidence in managing chronic pain when you're on your own. There's also physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological therapy, better sleep, which usually means less alcohol, and seeing a chiropractor or getting biofeedback and massage. If that's not enough, non-opioid drugs like Tylenol or Motrin and Advil or naproxen or Aleve can help. If those don't work, then it's time to consider something stronger. Sometimes that's opioids, but there's not great evidence that opioids are good for long-term pain in most people.
Do you have any advice for people suffering from chronic pain?
Well, it's important to work with a variety of providers who are working together to help you. The goal, again, is manageable pain so you can live a productive life. This can include physical therapy, most people can walk, to treat any underlying depression or anxiety, and to avoid further injuries. Finally, the National Pain Strategy is laying out a strategic roadmap to improve pain management system in this country.
Where can listeners get more information about managing chronic pain?
Listeners can go to the NIH website, nih.gov, and type in National Pain Strategy.
Thanks, Chad. I've been talking today with Dr. Chad Helmick about ways to manage chronic pain. If you're experiencing daily pain, talk with your healthcare provider to ensure you have the correct diagnosis and know how to manage your condition. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Credit where credit is due. Judge, now Justice Brett Kavanaugh, has taught the American people how decisions at the Supreme Court really will be made. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. At the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, Kavanaugh blamed the opposition to his nomination not on any legitimate concern about sexual assaults, but rather on a great left-wing conspiracy seeking revenge against him on behalf of the Clintons. In an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal that followed, Kavanaugh wrote, quote, "I said a few things at the hearing that I should not have said." But in that op-ed, Kavanaugh made no retraction, leaving the lasting impression that the Supreme Court really is just another political branch of government that implements the politics and beliefs of the people who held power when the justices were nominated and confirmed. The Supreme Court, throughout much of the nation's history, has benefited from the popular, although hardly universal, belief that the justices make decisions based primarily on the Constitution and the law. That perception, though hardly unchallenged, has remained significantly intact, notwithstanding the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings and the court's embarrassingly unprincipled decision in Bush versus Gore, where the court, not the people, elected Bush president. And now, Kavanaugh. Leaving the question, can the Supreme Court reclaim legitimacy? The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
At last, November 6th is coming. Time to vote. Let's all join the majestic panorama of democracy in action. Well, calling America's electoral process majestic is overdoing it, for millions of our citizens will not be allowed to vote. That's because a consortium of national, state, and local officials of Republican persuasion, along with their corporate ringleaders, have mounted a tawdry campaign over the past decade to slam the ballot box shut on entire segments of America's electorate. In a concerted effort, these rabidly partisan officials have targeted African Americans, students, Latinos, the elderly, union households, the poor, immigrants, and other communities of qualified voters to shoo them away on Election Day. Why? Because such citizens tend to vote for Democrats and progressive ballot initiatives. So the GOP's grand strategy is not to win by getting the most votes, but to keep from losing by aggressively and shamefully shutting out millions of Americans who might vote against their plutocratic, autocratic, kleptocratic candidates and agenda. Consider voting day itself. It's a Tuesday, a work day, automatically eliminating people working 2 or 3 jobs who can't afford to take off a couple of hours or more to get to the polls and wait in line to vote. Move elections to weekends, make it a holiday, vote by mail, make democracy easy. This is Jim Hightower saying, instead, in a depraved anti-democratic grab for partisan gain, Republican officials have frenetically been planting thick briar patches of ridiculous rules, logistical barriers, intimidation tactics, ballot deceptions, and outright voter bans in targeted precincts across the country. These thugs are stealing the people's most valuable civic property, our votes. Shouldn't they at least have to wear ski masks on Election Day so everyone can see who's doing this to us?
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. The African nation of Eritrea, described by numerous human rights groups as one of the world's most oppressive dictatorships, was among those rewarded with a seat on the UN Human Rights Council on Friday in an uncontested election likely to only further heighten criticism of the UN body. A total of 18 countries won 3-year membership on the Geneva-based council in a clean slate vote in which no seats were contested. Such elections, in which countries often predetermine who will compete for seats years in advance, have become a staple of both the UN Human Rights Council and the more important Security Council in New York. Critics charge that the political horse trading involved in seeking membership on those councils enables notorious rights-abusing countries like Eritrea, Bahrain, Cameroon, or the Philippines to distort global human rights norms and insulate their repressive governments from international scrutiny.
They see the UN as an organization where they can legitimize their rule in their own countries.
Javier El Aje is the chief legal officer for the Human Rights Foundation, a New York-based advocacy group.
They go out of their way to try to be in these organs because they know that way they can control what more or less is being said about human rights from the UN. And they can always go back to their countries and say, look, how can I be a human rights violator if I'm in the world's most important organ that regulates human rights around the world?
The United States is among the most vocal critics of the current structure of the UN Human Rights Council. Earlier this year, Ambassador Nikki Haley ordered the U.S. withdrawal from the council, accusing it of more frequently providing, quote, cover, not condemnation, for the world's most inhumane regimes. In a statement after Friday's elections, Haley said the uncontested vote, quote, demonstrates again why the U.S. was right to withdraw from the Council, though she did say the U.S. would continue to push for reforms of the Council from the sidelines. Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. And we begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. There is an active freeze warning in the area. I don't think we're going to get that chilly, at least this morning. It is as cold as it's going to get. And now we're going to warm up to a tad warmer than yesterday. It looks like we're going to be around 80. And we were at what felt like a chilly 75 yesterday, mostly because we had gusting winds up to 50 miles per hour and steady winds pretty much at 20 miles per hour and a little bit more, with the occasional gust up to 50 for several hours yesterday. And the angle of the sun being such as it is this time of year, it felt like fall. It was pretty chilly. Well, we are expected to be warmer, as I said. Looks like about the low 80s. Right now, winds are a negligible 1 mile per hour out of the east. They will continue out of the east, but pick up later on later on this morning into the early afternoon at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then will decrease later on tonight to light and variable and continue that way through tomorrow. We're going to have a low in the low 40s, I would say upper 30s. And then tomorrow we're going to have a high of, low to mid 80s. Don't do that to us. This is how people catch pneumonia, and we don't want that. The barometric pressure is falling at 30.25 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity right now is pretty low at 38%. Ragweed pollen is moderate. The air quality index is good at 22 parts per million. People are burning wood in their wood stoves because it was pretty chilly last night. So 22 parts per million isn't bad, though it could be better. And the daytime UV index is rated at moderate, but has now ticked another tick down at 3. So we were holding at 4 for just really only a couple of weeks, and now we're down to 3 for that daytime UV index. All right, well, it's fall. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people plan to purchase personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. All right, enough of those kinds of accents. London is 58 and cloudy. Paris is 79 degrees and sunny. Rome is 76 and partly cloudy with, get this, thunder and electrical storms that could knock out the electric grid in October. All right. Kiev is 61 and fair. Kabul is 57 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 75 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 75 and mostly cloudy. All right, well, so what? Tokyo is 63 and they're mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 63 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 61 degrees and sunny with a small craft advisory for really the heaviest winds that they've had in quite a few years. On the bay and offshore, so take care if you're in a small craft. And I would say take care in even some of the larger crafts. You're in a big bathtub in the bay. Yeah, reflective waves. They're the worst. And New York is 60 degrees and cloudy, and it looks like maybe you might have some rain coming your way. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's River City Ash Mondays is by Rongong Lin II from the LA Times. Yes, that's the Los Angeles Times. Red flag warnings have returned. Extreme fire weather conditions have prompted Pacific Gas and Electric to shut off power to thousands of customers in Northern California ahead of strong winds forecast in the region. By late Sunday night, the utility had shut off power to more than 17,000 customers in Lake Napa and Sonoma counties. An additional 42,000 customers in the Sierra foothills lost power in the counties of Amador, El Dorado, and Calaveras. Other counties could also came under power outages in Butte, Sierra, Placer, Nevada, Plumas, and Yuba. Well, that's where Oroville is. And so that brings the totals to way more than 100,000. My. The move is part of a strategy by utilities across California to reduce the risk of wildfires sparked by utility lines that break during extreme winds. Many of California's most destructive fires, including several that raced through wine country last year, were attributed to power lines. Well, they had massive wildfires before, but once you start messing with the grapes, you don't do that, okay? You don't do it. Mother Nature don't mess with the grapes like that. No, especially when man has intruded upon the landscape. Other utilities, including San Diego Gas and Electric, have shut off power during extreme winds in local areas, but the PG&E warning covers a vast area of Northern California, mainly in the Sierra foothills and the North Bay. Oh, as if that's nothing. We have made the decision to turn off power as a last resort, given the extreme fire danger conditions these communities are experiencing, Pat Hogan, Senior VP of Electric Operations, said in a statement. Gusty winds are forecast in the hills of the Bay Area, coming in from the land and headed west toward the ocean through noon today. Wind gusts in the higher elevations of the North Bay could reach as high as 70 miles per hour in the overnight hours into Tuesday. Critical fire weather conditions will continue in the North Bay Mountains and East Bay Hills through Monday morning due to a combination of strong, gusty offshore winds and low relative humidity. California's largest utilities are spending huge sums to improve their power system to better withstand winds. Southern California Edison is asking the state for permission to build $582 million on improvements, including strengthening poles and using better technology to determine when winds put the power grid at risk. PG&E asked customers to learn whether their home or businesses are in or near a higher fire threat on the California Public Utilities Commission Fire Threat District map. It also asked customers to update their contact info, and there are numbers to call at the links provided in all the counties on the Daily Coast Diary, where you can find me as Justice Putnam.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article from the San Francisco Chronicle by Anna D'Innocencio, and she's a retail writer for the paper there. And Sears has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy amid, oh my God, plunging sales, and massive debt. The question now is whether a smaller version of the company that once towered over the American retail landscape can remain viable, or whether the iconic brand will be forced out of business. Sears, which started as a mail-order catalog in the 1880s, has been on a slow march toward extinction as it lagged far behind its peers and incurred huge losses over the years. This is a company that in the 50s stood like a colossus over the American retail landscape. Craig Johnson, president of Customer Growth Partners, or retail consultancy, said, "Hopefully, a smaller new Sears will be healthier." Others do not share Johnson's optimism that a storied retailer, once at the pinnacle of the industry, should collapse in such a shabby state of disarray is both terrible and scandalous in equal measure, said Neil Sanders, managing director of Global Data Retail, in a note published on Monday. That'd be today. "In our view, too much raw to sit in at Sears to make it a viable business. The company has struggled with outdated stores and complaints about customer service, even for its once crown jewels, major appliances like washers and dryers. That's in contrast with chains like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Macy's, which have been enjoying stronger sales as they benefit from a robust economy and efforts to make the shopping experience more inviting by investing heavily in remodeling and decluttering their stores." Well, Target, clean up your stores too. I mean, sometimes they just push the baskets and everything of that they're going to stock, and it clutters the aisles. Stop that. Sears Holdings, which operates both Sears and Kmart, will close 142 unprofitable stores near the end of the year, with liquidation sales expected to begin shortly. And that's in addition to the closure of 46 unprofitable stores that had already been announced. And Edward S. Lampert, the company's largest shareholder, has stepped down as CEO but will remain chairman of the board. A new office of the CEO will be responsible for managing day-to-day operations. All right, well, we better get out of here because our broadcast period is coming to a close, but we will be back tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all the breaking news as it breaks, and it is going to break all day and all night and into the morning, and that's the time that we will visit with you again here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.